Mr. Walton, did you make contact with aliens? Were you taken to another planet, to a mothership? How did they communicate with... Can you tell me what they look like? Can you tell me how many of them there were? Were you given food?
But the teachers are alive. They're not books. They are the very living essences of nature itself.
What a strange person.
Unbelievably powerful supercomputer that's running our reality, and we don't have a clue as to how to operate it.
So when maybe you or somebody else creates an AGI system and you get to ask her one question, what would that question be?
What's outside the simulation?
Say in your mind, say to yourself, I am more than my physical body, because I am more than physical matter. I can perceive that which is greater than the physical world.
Welcome to Lighting the Void.
We're all broadcasting from New York, upstate, near the Great Lakes. It's the Lighting the Void, and I am your host, Joe Roop. I don't know how good my mic is sounding, but I can tell you it was a trip last night. We'll go back over that here. If you're just joining us, if you're listening to the show for the first time, this is Lighting the Void. We're a live show on the Fringe FM 5 nights a week here. We do a pretty eclectic broadcast about all things exploration of consciousness, esoteric, the occult, the paranormal, parapolitical, you name it. But it is a little different. I guess the only thing different about this show is me, right? And all the people that we get to have on here. So we did manage to salvage the broadcast from last night about the past life regression. There was a couple of things that I had to speak into. I don't really remember most of it. I've tried to journal as much as I can, but there are parts that I don't really have clarification about. It's kind of like a dream thing. When you have a dream, you write down as much stuff as possible. But the thing about it is I can tell you before the regression that Daniel Alexa, who was the hypnotist that did this with us last night, he was really good at what he does when it comes to getting me relaxed. Because I remember I had to turn the camera towards the couch, and I remember as soon as I put my headphones on and laid on the couch before he started to do the relaxation stuff to take me under, my heart was racing because I really honestly don't care too much about, I guess I don't care too much about what people think of me, but for some reason like this, I was afraid of this. Was kind of scary to me because I don't know, I guess I don't like not being in control. And I have to apologize if my mic sounds a little weird. Yesterday, all kinds of weird technical stuff happened. It was, I don't know what was going on with Ryan, but I do know that I have a piece of rack equipment that doesn't work properly. I've got a cable that doesn't work properly. It's like something got fried. So I probably sound a little different than I usually do, but the part where he takes you under, that's the most interesting part to me, because there's a lot of visualizations there. And all I remember was when I was going up through the pyramid thing, because he had me, I don't remember honestly the beginning of it, but I do remember walking down a path into the pyramid thing and sitting in a chair that was underneath this big pyramid that I eventually rose out of with a bunch of colors, and it kind of felt like one of those flying dreams. But yeah, so my brain's been kind of off, I would say, since then. Like it's kind of like when you have your first out of body experience, you're just kind of sitting there like, what happened, and then you're full of all this energy and downloads and stuff. And anyways, so we did get to salvage it. The past life regression thing, it's up on the podcast players and YouTube as well. And I'll be, putting that up in the stream for replay. Now, if you want to support the show, you can support the show by going to lightingthevoid.com. You can click on the Patreon button. You can make a one-time donation or use PayPal if you want. But I mean, if you're going to do the monthly donation thing, some of you do that. And, I don't know what we'd do without your support, honestly. But I feel like you should definitely switch to the Patreon, so at least you'll get something out of it when we do the Patreon stuff. But that's entirely up to you. I just appreciate you guys' support. And tonight we're going to be talking about an interesting subject when it comes to the materialistic view of the world, which I really think it's something we should talk about. To get into the philosophical reasons why we are where we are today, but Michael Grosso is going to be here with us tonight to talk to us about that. I don't know. Like, I would almost rather have had an out-of-body experience and, like, talked through that and talked about that live on the air, but I don't know. I feel like I had to do it. I've always wanted to do a past life regression since I read Journey of Souls by Michael Newton. If you've never read that book, you need to read it. It's awesome. But, yeah, I'm kind of like blown away by it still in a way, but I want to do it again. I want to learn how to do this stuff. I want to get into it more. I'm really into the depth, consciousness type stuff. I really love it. And I want to thank Ryan Gable for coming out. He felt so bad afterwards too, because if you guys were hearing it live, there were so many I've been editing it all day because there were so many like audio shots of things that were just going through and glitches. And even when I got done editing it, you'll hear it. Like it's got some type of weird echoes and stuff in there, like where the audio kind of, I have no idea, honestly. There was some weird stuff going on. And oddly enough, I haven't spoke to Ryan today other than text, so I don't really know how he feels about it. I'd like to get his recap on it too. But I will say this. I'll say I had my doubts about it. I don't have my doubts about Daniel, his skill, or what he's capable of doing. But I always hold doubt about things because I've listened to some of these regressions before, and they talk about their alien encounters and all of these different things. And it could be true. That's what I would tell myself. And it seems true. It could be true. And so a lot of the reasons why I wanted to do it was to see if it was real. And it's really not quite what I expected. Like, I thought that I was just going to go under and be like in this total oblivious state what I was still aware of everything. Like, I don't know. I was still aware of everything. And a lot of the times when Daniel would ask me a question, some of the answers that I could tell him, there was no visual for. It was more like a knowing or a communication type thing. But the one thing that really freaks me out about the whole thing was that I still see it in my mind, that geometrical shape, whatever that thing was. It was pretty damn psychedelic, I can say that. Because at first it just looked like a prism. I remember it looked like a prism. And then it looked like a diamond. And then it looked like water. And then it looked like flat. And then it kept changing like dimensions. I don't know. I don't know if you guys have ever seen like a hypercube in action, but it's kind of like that, but except it wasn't a cube. And I editing this thing all day, having to listen to myself, like it's embarrassing. I got to be honest with you. It's embarrassing. But, I mean, like as void walkers, I don't feel like we're ever going to understand the potential of us as explorers of consciousness, as practicing magicians or manifestors, as people that love, as people that want to understand the depth of things. If we don't like break these fears. And not every time I really want to do something that I get afraid of, I feel like that's what I should do. And when I go, here's the thing about doing what your soul or your heart wants you to do. I've been thinking a lot about this lately. That a lot of things will come up to try to stop you, even mundane things like technical glitches or COVID or, friends, family, whoever, stuff just comes up where it just tries to hold you back. But I really understand what Crowley and other books, not just Crowley, but other writers, philosophers, Stoics, etc., when they talk about the will. Like, because if you have the will to do what you want to do, to follow your heart, you'll find a way. It sounds pretty cheesy, right? Like that old 80s hair song, "Love Will Find a Way." But I'm serious though. You'll find a way. And I have no idea. Like, I just put that thing up on YouTube and the podcast players, and I'm freaking out. Like, what people are I'm not gonna lie to you, freaking out a little bit. But there's some big astrological energies that are about to happen. And, if you look in the sky, I was listening to Leo King too, that Saturn's been ahead of Jupiter for a long time, according to the viewpoint of the sun, which is the helio stuff. And then, the earth too. But just for this is like the first thing right now where Jupiter's going to be catching up to Saturn and passing it. That's good. I mean, there's big transitions happening. I can tell you this. And some of you listening, I know you're going through it. Some of them are careers. Some of them are relationships and major like spiritual events in your life, or people that are super spiritual. It's probably a little bit of both or all of the above. There are people getting like divorced after, I don't know, more than 10, 15 years of marriage. There's all kinds of stuff happening. I'm not saying this is happening to everybody, but there is. I guarantee you I could call Mary Ducina right now and say, hey, what's the trends of all the stories like? And she tells me. She doesn't tell me who the people are specifically or anything like that. She just tells me what the trends are. And I'm starting to see these stories that keep cycling. We've talked about this before. You remember, like, when we were talking about tarot and stuff, how we keep seeing these energies and these stories play out. And it's happening in such a big way in my life where I'm having like a deja vu experiences. Big ones. But I hope that you guys got something out of that. At least I still feel bad because of the technical stuff, but we salvaged the audio and it's up. All right. So, I mean, I don't know if we got like a couple of minutes here, I can go over some of the if you guys have any like questions about it. There's a couple of questions here in the Void Walkers patrons chat room, and I do have to get to those first. So Macon's asking, is anybody afraid of death? I've been thinking about this all day. I'm not afraid of death, but the suffering that comes before death, I do believe I'm afraid of. Just something to ponder on. Well, that I'm telling you right now, that Macon, I feel like when I was going through that gunshot thing, that it happened so quick. Whatever the hell he shot me with, it must have been a big caliber bullet because it did some damage. And the pain didn't really last that long, honestly. But I mean, that could just be my brain blocking it out or trying to remember it. And also too, if you guys are patrons, when you join the Patreon, you'll be able to join the Void Walker Elite Facebook page. So if you have any comments or questions in there, I promise I'll get to those first as well. Yeah, so I'm a little taken back by all this. I almost thought about today. I was like, if I didn't have a guest, I might reschedule just to chill out after this. But no, we're going to keep going. That's what we do best here. So tonight we're going to talk about the kind of things that the material world can do to keep you from knowing your potential. The material world is not a bad thing. Like, there are a lot of us, and Greg Carlwood talked about this when he came on too. We need to change our viewpoints about money and rich people and all that stuff. Being able to have good things in our life. I think it's ridiculous to be angry that people have good things or they're rich or whatever. There's just a lot of bad viewpoints about money, and what I think we need to realize is those viewpoints are what cause us to have a lack of those things. But also the focus on it, regardless of where you're focusing on it, like all you think about is those things, whether it's in lack or abundance, it keeps you from really like learning your potential of what you're capable of when it comes to conscious exploration, manifesting, and spiritual enhancement. And I think when you get older, the older you get, you start letting go of a lot of ideas and at least I can speak for myself. You start letting go of a lot of ideas and a lot of things that you really held on to really tight. You realize that most of the stuff that you feel like you have to achieve or you feel like you can only have once is an illusion most of the time. Like I feel like the first time I went in the corporate world, I thought, well, I just need to get a higher paying job. I mean, this is the evolution of it. I need to get a higher paying job, pays more by the hour. That's what I need to focus on. And yet, not much changed in my life as far as life goes. It was still just life. Nothing major changed for me spiritually. Nothing major changed for me other than I got more money. And then I was like, well, I need to make sure I got a job that has benefits, that gets me insurance and all this other stuff and retirement and vacation. It was just another job. Highest paying job I ever had, hourly, right? But it was just another job. And then you say, well, you know what? I don't want to work for anybody anymore. I want to work for myself. I'm sick of this. Sick of it. I want the freedom to work for myself, which is something that I'm still trying to do right now. I'm still doing, actually. But here's the thing. You think you're going to have a lot of freedom when you work for yourself, but most of us, that when we go and we work for ourselves, we end up trapping ourselves because we have to work so damn hard to get our businesses to be where they need to be. And you start really, once you get to that point, I don't know if you're in your 30s or 40s or whatever, where you get to that point, you're like, this is just a damn a game. While you're doing that, there are people that are playing like bigger games with this stuff, finding simpler ways to leverage and just making buku money. It's like nothing to them. And we're caught in the rat race, right? And then you look back and you've spent 30, 40 years on your life worrying about cash flow and material things. You're like, damn. You start to get this spiritual awareness. You start seeing some of the stuff that you could have done. But that's just the thing. We don't know about this stuff until we go through all the different things in life and sufferings and bad relationships and career changes and all this stuff, until we finally kind of really start to get to know ourselves when we get to a certain age. And none of it's a waste. You start to see the beauty in it. All the stuff that you hated got you to where you are. It's kind of profound, actually. And I think about like 10 years ago, would I be in what? Somebody said, hey, Joe, you're going to be like 10 miles south of the Canadian border doing late night radio and doing past life regressions. I'd have been like, get the hell out of here. But no. It's cool. Oh, before we go into break too, I want to tell you this. Like when I went to sleep last night, I haven't told anybody this today, actually. But when I went to sleep last night, I had the most vivid dreams I've ever had in my entire life. Like, I really think Daniel, like, unlocked something when going through that past life regression. I really do. I think that some of you guys should try it. If you can do a past life regression, actually, you know what? After what I went through, here's what I think you should do. If you really want to do a past life regression, I think you should let somebody like Daniel, I recommend Daniel too, or Jason Layton. But if you really want to do a past life regression, I think you should allow yourself to be hypnotized 2 or 3 times so you're used to going under, and then do it. Because all I want to do is do it again and get some more details. I feel more curious about learning this stuff than I've ever felt in my entire life because of what I just experienced. It's the same exact feeling that I got when I had that really profound out-of-body experience. Isn't that something? When we have those profound experiences, we wonder why everybody's doing psychedelics. It makes us more curious. It makes us more aware and intelligent in a way. I don't know about, not like IQ intelligent, but more curious intelligent in a way, and more aware of ourselves. And I'm looking at all this stuff with COVID now and all the stuff about the election, and I know that how majorly effective it is on our lives. I really do. But it just seems so damn mundane to me. In fact, I look forward to learning how I'm going to overcome all this stuff, because I think it's going to be an adventure, actually. Something that we'll all look back on and say, you remember when this stuff first started happening? The hell that we thought we were going to experience. The journeys and adventures we took to make connections and get through it. it really is going to bring people closer together in a way, and it's going to force people to kind of reevaluate their lives and then bring what matters to them most to them. That's what it's already starting. And so have the restrictions and the travel restrictions and everything else. But I'm telling you guys, the more people I talk to, at least in the podcast world, some of these people don't care. The people with strong wills, they'll find a way to do what they want to do. Some of you guys are amazing, actually. You're just really stubborn. And that's a good thing right now. So if you got any questions or you want to send any questions into the show, obviously the patrons get first dibs if you have the Voidwalker Patron Discord or the Voidwalkers Elite Facebook group. But you can also contact the show at contact@lightingthevoid.com. When we open up the phone lines, that number is going to be 1-800-588-0335. And we'll be right back. We're going to bring on our guest. Michael Grosso is going to be with us tonight. We're going to talk about his new book, and we'll be able to take your questions too. We'll be right back after these short messages.
Hey, Fringe listeners, this is Dave Cruz, host of Beyond the Strange Radio, asking you to join us live Sunday evenings at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, 10 p.m. Eastern, right here on the Fringe FM. Visit beyondthestrange.com for links to chat, social media, and schedules of the show. And remember, always stay strange. Hasta.
This is Crow 777, and you are listening to The Fringe FM.
You're listening to KTLK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Ryan Gable here, and I'd like to invite you to my radio broadcast, The Secret Teachings, airing 5 nights a week right here at midnight Pacific on The Fringe FM. Whether you enjoy history, the paranormal, symbolism, the occult, magic, parapolitics, or our annual Super Bowl show, our breakdown of the music entertainment industry, or our practical look at health, we have something for you that's unique, informative, and fun in rare form. Find us at facebook.com by searching facebook.com/The Secret Teachings. Find us online by searching www.thesecretteachings.info, or you can email us at rdgable, rdgable, @yahoo.com. That's The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, right here at midnight Pacific on The Fringe FM.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on the Fringe FM.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe.
This is KTLK Digital Broadcasting, the Fringe FM.
Lighting the Void. Tonight we're going to be talking about the human potential as far as, we're definitely going to take a depth and deep dive into the metaphysical. What's possible? What is possible for humans? Can we perform miracles? Especially in an age of disbelief where there seems to be so many boundaries and so many blocks to what we're capable of. Michael Grosso's here with us, and he's an independent scholar and a part of an ever-growing group of scholars and thinkers critical of the prevailing materialistic view of the world. And he has taught humanities and philosophy at Marymount Manhattan College, City University of New York, and City University of New Jersey, and is the author and co-author of numerous books, with some of the latest works focusing on psychic anomalies that challenge reductive thinking and reality with limited potential. And that is a topic that we like to discuss here on the show, the human potential. Michael Grosso, thank you for joining us on the broadcast. It's good to have you.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm pleased to be here.
So this time that we're going through now with all this stuff, I believe does affect our abilities to think what we're capable of. It limits us. It feels like it's blocking us from experiencing life and doing things. But I also think that in a way, because we're forced and disconnected from everybody, that in a way, unless you just get Stockholm syndrome, it is forcing us to look inside ourselves a little bit, and hopefully we're unlocking stuff during these times. But I know that your book is out, and I really like the title. Actually, I think it's a great title. It's called "Smile of the Universe: Miracles in an Age of Disbelief." And tell me a little bit about why you wrote this book.
Sure. I since I was a child, I can remember occasionally, not regularly, but occasionally and impressively having odd experiences that I couldn't quite make sense out of. And I'll just mention very briefly something I'm still remembering many decades ago. I remember waking up one morning after a vivid dream that I was going to play ball with a kid on the block that I had never talked to. And as soon as I got up and had breakfast, I forgot about that dream. And I stepped out and I saw this kid coming right at me, and he drops a ball. He said, "Hey, let's play off the wall." And for some reason, that blew my mind. my dream, okay, so it goes back that far. And even during and I should say this, that my experiences of the various unusual, I've experienced, I would say, almost every type of paranormal phenomenon: telepathy, precognition, and particularly I've had experiences of psychokinesis, where the mind directly seems to affect the body. So my own experiences attuned me to the idea that there are mysteries out there that are, unknown. And then I got into philosophy. I guess maybe there was an unconscious connection. And by the time I got to graduate school, I found myself surrounded with people that seemed to be automatically convinced that things like miracles and ESP were impossible. And having had these encounters a good part of my life from time to time, I was coming from a different perspective. And it drove me to be more curious. And when I finally got my degree a while back in 1971, I've been around for a while, I was free then to start, looking into these matters on my own. And I started to do research and meet people. And then somewhere along the line, I wrote my first paper on the subject and had it published. And since that time, I realized I was not the only person who was in that odd position of having experienced things that the mainstream way of looking at the world doesn't approve of. So, and now I think the more I've been into this as time gone on, I feel it's very important to try to widen the average understanding of the world. I mean, many people don't have these experiences, and they sound fantastic and strange. And but surprisingly, I think if you poke around, and my experience has been that if I talk to people and get them to open up, almost everybody has some kind of a story to tell of something that is inexplicable to them. But most of the time, they either ignore it or they just don't bother to deal with it, or they sometimes even repress it. With me, it's been the opposite. I don't ignore it. I look for it. And not only in my own experience and in stories I learned from other people, but there's an enormous literature on the question, on these issues that I write about in my latest book, for example. It's part of the history of human experience. But there's always been a difficulty from age to age and epoch to epoch dealing with these phenomena, precisely because they are strange and unpredictable and deeply puzzling. But and that's where it's at today. The mainstream culture tends to be rather uncritically materialistic in its outlook, and the average, especially educated person, suspects that these things are, iffy or if impossible or whatever. But on the other hand, there are some changes taking place. There is a growing interest all over the world at a popular level, spontaneous level, people exploring, experiencing, reporting their UFO experiences, for example. The apparitions of Mary are taking place all over the world. So there seems to be a growing, let's say, I won't call it a revolt quite, but a growing propensity to be more open and to be more willing to explore these mysteries. So I'm part of that process, and that's how I got to writing this last book, and most, not all, but most of my other books.
Yeah, well, I mean, you sound like a man of my own heart, except you're really digging in there, and I really think that's a special thing to get people to open up to you. Why do you think? I really do. I mean, that's something that I like to do too. Why do you think so many people open up to you more than they do others, or do you find that that's true?
Well, if someone thinks that you're sort of being sane and reasonable about it, if you have a doctor in front of your name, that may make them a little more receptive. It's like the placebo works more when a doctor gives it, because there's a sense of, this is a man of authority or a woman of authority.
Yeah, right.
And we can believe, you see. And, well, my experience has been that it's only highly educated people that have an almost, sometimes I would say, an extreme resistance I mean, I have had encounters with people where I'm just laying the facts out right in front of them, my own or references that are just, incorrigibly potent, and they just won't believe it. I mean, I've had someone reviewed I wrote a book about levitation, and someone in the so-called skeptic wrote a review of the book, which was so absurd, it was really laughable. I mean, it was absurd in the way he tried to avoid the implications of the evidence that I laid out in the book for the reality of levitation. And I mean, I won't go into his attempts, but in my judgment, they were totally off the wall and totally silly. And basically, he just didn't pay attention to the evidence. He came up with a theory that would explain a priori all of these phenomena, which is completely unscientific and intellectually dishonest. So it is an interesting question that you're asking. Why are people to the point where they will be dishonest in the denial of these phenomena? And that's a question that I keep asking myself. And I guess folks, especially as they get older and deeply entrenched in their own worldview, and if, for example, they are anti-religious and they associate, let's say, miracles with religion. I'm not very religious, by the way, but I respect the various religions. But so there are reasons like that. I mean, I once got a letter from a Marxist, critical type thinker. I'm pretty inclined toward critical thinking myself about politics. But he said, you're a rare guy because he picked up some of my socially critical attitudes, but you're a rare guy because you're socially critical, like a Marxist almost, if you will, not quite maybe, and at the same time you believe in the paranormal. And I said, why not? And I don't see any inconsistency at all. We can be progressive in our attitudes toward economics and justice and all that, and at the same time believe that the world is a more fascinating and more complex and mysterious place than our rational minds allow us to admit. So it is a very fascinating question. Why the culture remains anchored. And another answer would be, a very simple thing would be to say that scientific materialism works in a very dramatic way by producing all kinds of fantastic, almost amazing technologies that we can do things in the world with science that are so shockingly potent and overwhelming, and so and add to that the sort of consumerist or aspect of that our culture is built around consumerism in so many ways that these are all material values, and they seem to be the dominant forces of our lives. And it's only in our private lives, and it's when we get out of the way of everyday living and go into critical situations, when we're challenged in ways, when we're up against the edge of reality, right, when we're facing death or illness, then suddenly the perspective on the world can change and people become a little more sensitive to other possibilities. But the average everyday lifestyle of our culture is not conducive to that kind of receptivity.
Do you believe that it's because it's possible that they've trained us to become too comfortable?
Well,
in comfort, we're not challenged.
Yeah, that's right. There's a degree of mental comfort. I've had a number of friends that I really count as good friends, and in every way smart, intelligent, and decent persons. But when it comes to the question of with these particular individuals, not everybody thinks like this, but these particular individuals on the issue of life after death, it freaks them out. They don't even want to talk about it. I've had colleagues of mine as a teacher, as an academic, where I've offered them books that are excellent, scholarly, rational explorations of the evidence for life after death, and they shrink from the book. They wouldn't even, I could tell stories, they wouldn't even touch the book. It freaks them out so much. And my guess there is that they're so freaked out by death in the first place that they don't even want to think about the possibility of life after death. That's my only interpretation, that they're really in denial of death, and they don't want to think about it. I've found that even in family relations, they just don't want to think about it. Others, on the other hand, are more open, and it's hard to predict how people will respond.
Well, I remember talking to you a year ago, and it was almost exactly a year ago, you're on this broadcast, and we were talking about your book about the man who could fly, Joseph of Cupertino, and the mystery of levitation. Yeah. And we got into a little bit of this conversation when it came to the human potential as far as what we're actually capable of, things that we don't believe in as far as miracles are concerned, yet they're documented on a daily basis, especially in medicine. I mean, we even have someone in the chat room talking about how they had I don't know the specifics of it, but a severe condition and or a health condition, and it's gone. You know, we do perform miracles every day. I personally believe, at least in a health sense with our bodies, that, and Greg Carlwood talked about this too, that we can change major things about our bodies simply by meditation and focus, belief. I mean, if not the placebo effect, does certain things to people. I mean, what is that? They say that's science, but they can't prove how it works at all.
I agree with you. I mean, the placebo is staring us in the face. It has there's so much literature on that, which is so convincing. And then there are some cases that are so wildly extravagant where, there's nothing there. It's just a belief, and people will be transformed. And of course, scientists know about this because they use placebo. They're using it right now in the testing for the vaccines. But the fact of the matter is, let's say, I know one area of the drugs that are used to reduce anxiety, the drugs work just a tiny little better than the placebo. I mean, the statistics are such that I forgot the figures, but it's 1 or 2 points difference. In effect, there's virtually no difference between taking a drug that's supposed to heal or reduce or alleviate your anxiety, and just taking something that you believe will reduce your anxiety. Right. That in itself is amazing, and it's sometimes not just mental states, but physical states are affected. So I agree with you completely. In the realm of health, one of my persistent ideas is that we really need to work on a new health paradigm, one that relies more upon mental, emotional, and spiritual values, health-conducive values, than drug-oriented. I have nothing against drugs and surgery when they are the only means available, and so that's not. I'm not foolish about that. On the other hand, there's an awful lot of unnecessary reliance upon drugs and surgery. There's huge amounts of evidence to point in that direction, and we need to think about health in new ways that involve these emotional, spiritual, and psychic variables, and that's one of my ongoing themes, as it were. Well,
if you look at also another thing too that kind of just gives it away is there are documented several cases of physical changes, like you were talking about, in people that have multiple personalities or dissociative disorder, where their eye colors have changed. They've had different vision. I mean, think about that.
Mm-hmm.
All they have to do is believe that there's somebody else, and physical attributes about them change. Doesn't that say that we could do that? Even in the smallest cases, like I would say, like where people want to lose weight, but they're telling themselves it's so hard. I got to work so hard and exercise and eat right, which of course you do. But if you change, what if you believed that you could actually just change it just because you wanted to?
Yes, I absolutely. I think the belief part. I mean, we know that belief is a variable that predicts success in parapsychology tests. If two people go into a test and the one person is skeptical and doubtful and rigidly so, and the other is, open, flexible, and spontaneous, the latter is much more likely. I mean, this is proven over and over again to fare well in the test. And the same thing, I believe, is true in the general walk of life, that if you're open and have some kind of a system, you need something to activate the mind in a certain way. But if you are open, and this belief variable, which is really complex, it's more than just belief. It's the imagination, it's expectation, it's the whole direction of your mind and consciousness that is crucial in being conducive to these, changes that you're aspiring to. So that's definitely something that we can all learn from, and so try to incorporate in our lifestyles, learning how to think our belief systems in such a way that we're more creative, both mentally,
Telepath is a weekly digital newsletter.
So this is one of the things that a new paradigm hopefully will help people to move toward.
Yeah. So I believe that too. And I'm sorry about the audio glitch, y'all. I guess it's still doing that stuff from last night. But look, I'm just gonna have to shut that off until we get that fixed. I did a past life regression last night, and all kinds of weird technological stuff have happened. But I wanted to really dig into this subject here too, because I think that you got, I think you got some good points. I haven't read your book, but why did you title it? I can kind of tell what it's about too, based on what you're saying. But why did you title it "Smile from the Universe"? It's almost like a joke, or not a joke, but like an ironic wink, right?
It's that sort of. Yes, it is good. You got that part, but there's a literal thing, which I explain right up front in the book. The word miracle is rooted in a Sanskrit root of the Indo-European languages that means smile.
Oh,
and you can see that. You see, so that a miracle is also related to the word admire. So things happen extraordinary. My definition of miracle, of course, is just, an event that's not physically explainable. That's basically what I'm trying to say. But when you encounter something that baffles you in a surprising way, let's say an unexpected healing or a strange telepathic coincidence or something like that, and it really has it stops you cold, and you admire it, it astonishes you, and it might make you smile. It's a sense of kind of an inner psychic smile. But I thought that was a cool title because I think of the universe as smiling at us from time to time. We can never predict when a miracle is going to take place. I mean, thousands of people pray for things, and only once in a while it seems that they get answers. But yes, that's behind the. Someone suggested to me I should have inverted it and simply used that as the subtitle of the book, but because it might baffle people, but. In other words, at any rate, that's the basis of my of that metaphoric use of the word smile to identify the world of the miraculous.
And so in this book, you Do you write about certain cases too as well, or certain stories that some of these miracles have happened?
Yeah, I begin with I call it a concise anthology of miracles, and it's one of the longest chapters in the book, which I just entertain the reader's imagination with a variety of extraordinary phenomena, levitations, instantaneous healings, modern stuff too. Like in 1995, there was this. It lasted, I think, for one day. There was a miracle, a miraculous disappearance of milk in India. There's this god, Ganesha, an elephant-headed god of the destroyer of obstacles, little statues of it, and some guy put some milk at it, put some milk on a spoon. This is a normally thing. You bring the milk to it and you pour it inside a cup near the statue. But in this case, the milk disappeared. And then it started to happen all over the world, wherever there were statues of Ganesha in Hindu temples. And I actually watched an example of it taking place by a BBC reporter was demonstrating. He said, "This is," and the guy who didn't know what was going to happen. I could see the look on his face. So he takes a little cup of milk. The camera focuses on the milk. It's right near the statue, and you can see the milk literally, slowly vanish into nothing. And I'll never forget the look on the face of that BBC report. Totally astonished. Later on, I had two of my students who were Indian, and they wrote reports. One of them told me that he went on the line 3 times to convince himself. It was so astonishing. He brought milk 3 times and described in detail in his report. And he said, it just disappeared slowly, though. So
wow.
Anyway, so that stuff like that, and these are things taking place today. I'm also very interested in terms of just laying out accounts of phenomena that are taking place today, and that is materialization of tears and blood, again with statues or paintings of a religious character. Especially statues of during the 1990s. I have a whole chapter in the book, which I give case after case during the 1990s, all over the world, including in the United States, by the way, and Italy, but all over, not in Japan, of statues of the Madonna, particularly the Madonna weeping. And I myself, I opened the book, by the way, with I had seen on television, Channel 4, a report about a weeping statue in a church in Astoria, New York City. So I was living in New York at the time, in Manhattan. So I got on a train or drove. I think I drove. I drove to Astoria, got online and went inside this church, and I witnessed this statue of Saint Irene weeping. There were thousands of people there, maybe not that, maybe hundreds when I got there. And I did it twice. I had a colleague with me. He witnessed the same thing. I questioned. I could see. I mean, it was just obvious what was happening. And, of course, it was conceivable that there was some kind of trickery, but I don't think that there was. And I mean, no church is going to be that stupid to try to, fool the world in the 21st century about these things. Sometimes there are mistakes, misinterpretations, or exaggerations, but in this particular case, I myself witnessed it. So these are the kinds of things and then the rest of the book takes up various issues associated with the claims about these phenomena. And I review some of the philosophers and scientists who have fundamentally just refused to accept the reality of these things and try to expose their pig-headedness and narrow-mindedness. And then the two other major things I try to do in the book is, number one, argue that based on all of this phenomena, we can form a hypothesis that we live in a world where there is a greater mind than our own personal minds. I don't call it God. I don't call it your angels or anything. You can call it anything you like, but I make the inference that there is a greater mind. I call it mind at large. There's a history behind that terminology. And the second major point that I argue is that it's possible for people, and you don't have to be necessarily religious. I present this as a scientific hypothesis, or as a hypothesis to support your belief system if you are religious. Either way, I don't care. But what I argue is that there are different ways that people can learn to try to interact with that greater mind. And of course, people have been doing it for years in the form of prayer and rituals, and religion has been doing it. Well, what I'm trying to say is, in my book, is that, okay, religion is one way of approaching, but we don't have to be religious to engage with this greater mind that is part of all of us. And because I know that lots of people get turned off by any sense of, religious identity. And so my whole approach is, if you have that identity, fine. And then it's even easier for you to appreciate what I'm saying. But for those who are just strictly maybe open-minded but not religious, I'm saying there's a lot of data out there that can help expand your sense of reality and perhaps improve your life if you approach it in the right way. That's the gist of my book.
Well, that's fantastic. I do want to talk a little bit more about this, the all is mind theory, because I got a, I don't necessarily think it's a theory, but I know we got to take a break here. We're at the top of the hour already. Look, we'll go ahead and open the phone lines up too. If you want to call in, it's 1-800-588-0335. As well, you can join our chat room by going to thefringe.fm/chat room. We'll be right back. Dr. Michael Grosso, stay with us.
This is country music singer and void walker Jason Benoit, and when I need my fix on the world of magic and the capabilities of the human consciousness, I listen to Joe Roop right here on Lighting the Void Radio.
Hey, this is No Way Jose, a Northern California Piscean stuck in the Arizona desert. I'm a void walker, and I got the shoes to prove it. So what do I do when my soul yearns to delve deep into the realm of the unknown? I aim my satellite straight into the night sky and catch a smooth ride on the KTLK-DB radio waves. I tune into Lighting the Void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Joe, Lighting the Void is the best show on the planet. This is Barney, your friend from Facebook. Thank you and all the crew for all you do. Namaste, my friend.
This is Macon from the foothills of North Carolina, and I am a void walker.
G'day, void walkers. This is Lily from down under Australia. The world may be small, the enigma is greater. So let your curiosity take you for a journey with Joe Roop.
Hey, this is V, coming in from Central Maryland, and I am a void walker.
This is Kevin Doherty, a beginner void walker. I'm from Vancouver, BC. I know a little about a lot, and as Leonard Skinner said, I guess the rest. I learned a lot from Mr. Roop in the show, and heard it from the beginning. I knew right then he was going to be a new Art Bell. Thanks for all your shoulders and keep it up.
Hey, this is Derek from Mass, aka the Night Stalker, and I'm a Void Walker.
This is Mark from Chicago, and I walk the void to ascertain what is consciousness.
My name is Jared Johnson, and I'm from Humboldt County, California. I do not know all of the answers to the questions about reality. I do not claim to know the ultimate truth about life. I seek that which has been made hidden as a part of a family of explorers of consciousness. I'm a Void Walker. Thanks, Joe Rube.
Yohoy there, Gigi here from Shift Happens. Do you like to boogie down to topics such as ufology, the occult, and the mysteries behind our reality? Well, I invite you to join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 p.m. Eastern, as we like to punch that curiosity button and tickle that fancy. We tickle that fancy, but yeah, I don't know if that's the right analogy, but there's certainly a lot of tickling going on over here at Shift Happens.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada. You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Well, Dr. Michael Grosso, our guest tonight, we're talking about his new book. And, before the break, you were talking about that the universe, there's like this universal mind, and that's something that I've kind of studied myself in Hermeticism. The old Emerald tablets where they say "as above, so below," and it's funny too because you're also talking about a lot of these Catholic statues and stuff, and a lot of the Hermeticists like Eliphas Levi and others, they were members of the Catholic Church. So I do think that there's some connection there, I wonder. But do you think that, and I'm just curious about what you think with all of your studies, if there's a direct connection between Catholicism, which means universal, the word Catholic means universal, and the universal mind. And you were talking about ritual too, which is something else Catholicism does. I think there's some kind of tie there,
Yeah, well, actually, I had this talk with a colleague of mine who's professor of religious studies, and I said, I get the impression that there's a lot of unusual phenomena associated with the Catholic tradition. And of course, that's one that I know most about, and we in the Western tradition. And there is no doubt about the fact that the Catholic tradition, there are two things you can say. Number one, it emphasizes the continuity of the phenomena, that miracles are possible in the modern world. And that's the interesting thing, though, is that the Protestant Reformation argued that miracles were only occurred during the biblical times. So, but the second point I want to make about the Catholic tradition is that it's rooted in Roman law, so that when you have when people, in the Catholic tradition, especially if they're known, saintly people who claim or are reported to have exhibited miraculous abilities, the church goes at it in a very legalistic way and tries to collect evidence. And especially from the 17th century on, with the rise of the scientific revolution and the emphasis on evidence, the church has kept that up. So that's one important thing to notice. That I think my own suspicion is that all traditions have all kinds of extraordinary things happening, but the Catholic tradition And you're right to emphasize, in principle, it's kataholon, meaning in accordance with the whole, universal. That yes, there is a receptivity to these phenomena, and there are also practices that I think are conducive. So, for example, celibacy required in the church may not be a great idea for some men. On the other hand, and women, of course, because they have desires just like as men. But I think what you have in the church, and this is just my speculation, a greater, more sublimation, precisely because the sexual energies are repressed in the church, that they are sometimes forced to, they are mobilized, I believe, and sublimated into phenomena. In the case of Joseph, we go back to Joseph of Cupertino, who was a fountainhead of miracles. It was said of him, in fact, he reported this to some of his fellow priests, that the most spectacular levitations coincided with his struggle to control his sexual fantasies. He claims that he never yielded and that he died a virgin. I don't know how you can prove that with a guy, but I don't believe there's no reason to doubt him. In any case, he's definitely not a ladies' man, but he was quite frank about admitting that he was constantly struggling with his erotic fantasies. And that, I would suggest, may have been a psychological variable that came into play and was exploited unconsciously in the production of the energy of the forces, whatever it is it takes to perform these astonishing feats of healing and levitation and all the rest. And it's true for, in yoga, you have a whole, in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, in the last book of that classic, it's just a long list of siddhis, or so-called attainments, the miraculous effects of that result from intense meditation and mental focus. So, and in other words, the extraordinary phenomena are phenomena associated with extraordinary situations. And, by asceticism, profound need. We know in the modern world, near-death experiences often produce mystical experiences and paranormal phenomena. And in a way, the saints and the mystics are trying to do the same thing, kind of causing a slow near-death, in the sense that they withdraw their attention from the external world. They suppress their normal impulses, erotic and human, even friendship. They fast, so they change their physiology. All these things, in a sense, upset the normal relationship of the body to the environment. And I think as a result, it leaves room for the more extraordinary forces latent in us to express themselves, often in these astonishing and miraculous ways. So anyway, those would be just a few comments on the Catholic angle on the miracle story. But it's not. Yeah, that's what I would say.
Well, the bleeding statue things with the that is something that I've never really understood. Well, I mean, I guess I kind of understand it, but I like to try to think about how things work. And the theory of all is mind and the universe does go along with a lot of things. If you think about it, well, not just Hermeticism, but a lot of things. Going through a past life regression and hypnotism, we're talking about the placebo effect. What is all of this, but in the mind? But a lot of people think that the universe is this big soul. But why does everything that happens so magically a lot of the times relate to the mind? I wonder. I think about that too.
Well, I think the words mind and soul are basically similar. I mean, we associate soul with the principle of life. I mean, in Greek, it's psyche, which means breath. I don't know what that's the same thing in English, the root of the word. But I mean, soul, mind, spirit, consciousness. These are all they have different connotations, but they're all on the same side of our inner life, as opposed to our physical public, and they're private, right? What's inside your soul, what's inside your mind, is private to you, and you have to reveal it, through words or your bodily gestures. So, but those terms do have different meanings and connotations, but they all stem from the inner life of human beings. And
so you're saying that it all kind of relates. It all kind of means the same thing too. Because if we get this super definitive mentality about it, then we're kind of missing the big picture here.
Exactly, and the thing is that this mental, interior, invisible, intangible side of our nature is much larger, deeper, and far more far-reaching than we normally believe and think, because our everyday, mental life tends to be relatively narrow. It's fixated on the things that we're doing, the senses, our bodily sensations, our anxieties and joys of everyday life, and so on. But our mental world is potentially, vast. And I think in terms of the production of miracles, we get a little hint when we realize that we have to sort of empty or unclutter. It's when we unclutter the mind. That's why when we go to sleep and dream, we're withdrawn from the external world, and we're totally in the mental world. And often it's in dreams that people have psychic experiences. They have dreams of things that are happen in the future, for example, or they dream of a friend who's suffering, and they're called crisis apparitions and so forth. But so it's the retreat from the physical reality that seems to liberate the powers that transcend physical reality. So that's another aspect that I explore in my book. I try to give some hints to readers as to how they can put themselves in a state that is a little more conducive to the occurrence of these creative breakthroughs that we call miracles. And, that's human beings have been practicing and trying to figure out how to do that since the get-go. But in our contemporary materialist culture, secular culture, I think we're forgetting a lot of these ancient abilities, and capacities, and that's in part what the new paradigm is all about. It's an attempt to revive. It's like a renaissance, really. There was a great renaissance back in the 15th century, but I feel that we may be in the midst of the early stages of a 21st century renaissance of consciousness. By the way, I was listening to some of the comments on the break there, and I would add, by the way, to my list of miracles, consciousness. Consciousness is something that even the most committed materialists admit they can't explain the origin of consciousness out of the brain. They're two totally different kinds of things, right? Our brains are correlated. There are correlations between mental and brain events, but the mental or conscious event is very different from anything that takes place in the brain. So it's important to realize that. As a matter of fact, once you realize how distinct from the brain the mind and consciousness is, you already have the beginnings of an argument for life after death. Because if you cannot explain how the mind emerged out of the brain, the suggestion in it is that our minds pre-exist the brain. And if our that implies that when our brain dies, our minds may continue to exist, and because you can't reduce one to the other, even though they interact while we're living. There's no question about an interaction and between mind and brain, but that's interaction is not identity. The materialists say the mind is the brain, but that's utter nonsense. That you can't prove that or show that. They're two different kinds of reality.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. Well, no, I'm with you on that too. The thing is I wonder about the function of the brain. I get too really analytical about this stuff. I mean, is it just an organ where consciousness itself had to create it? Because if you look at things geometrically speaking, everything seems to come into sequence in this earth in some sort of Fibonacci sequence, right? And it does that. And then you look at the brain and you're like, well, that's a super complex, if there's Fibonacci sequences in there in any kind of fashion. It's almost like consciousness is creating something or a vessel to hold itself in a way, you know? That's what because when you look at the placebo effect, right? Where you got the wave and the particle thing, and then you talk about manifestation, then basically it's almost like consciousness is tricking itself on purpose sometimes, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. I have to be honest with you. It's really one of the mysteries, the relationship. Yeah. But the best way to I think that the main point is that I would hold to, which is not inconsistent with what you just said, is that there are two ways to think of the relationship between our consciousness and our brains. The one is the materialist view that the brain creates consciousness. The other is what I believe is the correct view. It goes back to William James, by the way, who articulated this. And that in this case, the brain does not create consciousness, it transmits it. There's a total difference. And that, if the brain transmits, it's like a television set. That's often used as a metaphor. There aren't real people inside that television set. The television set is a device. I mean, it's a complicated device, not as complicated as the brain, to be sure. But in principle, it would seem the same thing, that the images you see on the television screen are not in the screen. They're somewhere else. The screen and the television is simply transmitting the information. And that is the theory that makes more sense.
Interesting.
For mind, brain and consciousness. It's much more coherent to think that way. And as I said,
are you saying that it's possible that you, like this conversation that we're having now, you and I both are aware, we're both conscious, but it could be possible that we exist somewhere else already and it's transmitting here and interpreting it too at the same time?
The way something like that, the way I see it is that our minds, your mind and my mind, are drops. Your mind is a drop, my mind is a drop of a big mind. We're in that big mind. We're part of that mind. But the part of our minds that are mediated by our bodies. And that's why we're separate. We are separated by the bodily differences, the cultural differences, but the core of our inner life is rooted in something not physical, but something mental, a larger mind. So we come back to that idea that I mentioned earlier about what I call mind at large, or the Brahman in the Hindu, the spirit in the Christian tradition. There's one spirit that pervades and inspires different people in different ways. One consciousness that reflects our different personalities, our different bodies, our different brains, because each brain is different. It's a product of a certain history and a certain culture. And so, but at the root of it all is this single pure light, as it were, of consciousness. And that is also quite mysterious, where that began. It's, in every philosophy, you have to make certain assumptions. as things being fundamental, and the mind and the spirit and consciousness seem to be part of a fundamental reality. And once we start thinking in those terms, it's very helpful, I think, because then I can look at you as a different person from me. And in your case, we have a lot of views that we share together. But whoever you are, a human being, all human beings are bound to be different. But if we understand that we're rooted in a common consciousness, a common human essence, we should, be able to learn to tolerate, and not only tolerate, but enjoy and celebrate each other's differences, as long as they don't infringe upon our human rights. So anyway, that's kind of a metaphysical picture that I'm trying to sketch there. But I hope I'm being reasonably clear.
It's really cool. I love talking about this stuff too. So, do you feel like the uniqueness of who we are through this transmitter, do you feel like that goes, so say the body dies, right? Does the uniqueness of that individual piece of consciousness go back to the whole? Does it lose its identity? Does it lose its uniqueness, do you think?
I don't see any reason why it should, because the reason is, let's say, each of our minds pick up the memories and experiences, feelings, ideas that we undergo while we are in our bodies. But those characteristics, the memories, the feelings, the inner identity is mind. So when the brain dies, there is part of that return to the deeper mind, and where you feel and sense, especially from the near-death experience, the mystical experience, or many paranormal experience, you feel that greater mind more vividly, but I don't see any reason to believe that we lose our personal minds. Now, it may be that if we're too attached to those personal minds in the next world, let's say in our survived state, we may be too attached, and this may account for some reincarnations. Like we want to go back and do more of what we didn't quite complete when we were embodied beings. So, on the other hand, the great teachings often say, like Buddhism, being reincarnated means that you screwed up. You didn't get pure. You didn't purify your consciousness enough. So you have to go back and keep working at the process. But the goal would be not to be forced to come back, but to remain at the higher level, the purer level. And if you do come back in Buddhism, you come back as a bodhisattva. You consciously come back with the intention of trying to help people, but not with the intention of just trying to compensate for an incomplete previous life. Anyway, I don't know if that's true, but it's an interesting idea. But no, to answer your question, it's a very interesting question, by the way. I don't believe that. I believe that our personalities, and by the way, the evidence of life after death seems to indicate that. When you, in mediumship and the various indications of life after death suggest that a person no doubt undergoes changes, but the personality in some shape or form remains. And on the other hand, if you're not psychically too integrated, I can imagine being separated from your body could be very distressing and frightening. Maybe that's where we get ideas about excuse me, hell and heaven.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. That we could get our ideas of hell and heaven that way, because you hear people say all the time, well, hell is this place where you're separate from God. Okay, well, we can call that unity consciousness, where you don't feel connected at all. You feel disconnected, and you feel a suffering that happens because you're not getting the connections, the recognition, the types of things that you want in life. It's just suffering, which
exactly.
I think we create our own hell in a way a lot of times too, from just trying to fulfill our own things.
Absolutely, and we do it in everyday life. I mean, how many times do we catch ourselves really inflicting pain? Every time I get, let's say, annoyed, let's say something in politics, that nowadays we know these things are going on, I get very angry sometimes about things. I won't say what, I don't want to bring politics in. And then I stop myself and say, what am I allowing myself to get sucked up in this really unpleasant emotion? And I'm torturing myself. We're our worst enemies, and our own worst enemies, I believe. And we are creating our own hells. And we have the power in us to create, heaven, or the good, the positive. And a lot has to do with making choices. Now, it's not easy just to choose. I mean, when you're angry at something and you've been wronged or you're frustrated, it's not easy to just wipe those emotions out. It takes practice, too. You have to learn how to deal with emotional stress. And there are methods. I mean, we can breathe differently. We can repeat a mantra. We can say a prayer. We can go in the garden. Or this morning I was raking leaves and loving every minute of it. The sun pouring down on me, the fresh air. And I wasn't thinking about everything. I was just doing stuff I had to do, physical stuff, and sort of cleaning my psyche out for the day, So, yeah, that's a great idea about heaven and hell. It's right here and now. And we're making it. And sometimes we inflict it on others, needless to say. Sartre said, hell is other people.
Right. And out of all of the things that you've experienced in your life, as far as all the stuff you told us that you've experienced before, what do you think is the most profound piece of paranormal experience? Do you think it's things having to do with consciousness, like telekinesis? Because I can tell you're more into the consciousness side of things than you are maybe like hauntings and stuff like that. I'm not into the ghosts. I'm not saying ghosts aren't cool or trying to figure out what they are, but to me, they could just be out of body people traveling around causing paranormal activity. To me, it's all kind of seems like it's consciousness.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting question. I would say that there are several very striking, but one of the most striking experiences I ever had was back in 1971. I was living in Greenwich Village with my girlfriend, and on April 23rd, which coincidentally was my girlfriend's birthday and Shakespeare's birthday, it was 11 o'clock at night, and we were listening to John Coltrane, the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, really wild jazz, right? And I get up and I go to the windows on the 6th floor in Greenwich Village. I had a 6th floor apartment. I look out the window, and as I'm sort of beating my foot with the music, I look up into the sky, and a cluster of dazzling lights comes down practically maybe 300 feet above me and starts moving around in rhythm with the music. And for a split second, I'm saying, yeah, that's cool. And then suddenly I realize, what the hell am I looking at? It's no plane. It's moving, like a classic UFO, zipping around. I say, Jane, come over here and check this out. And she had the wit to raise the window to make sure it wasn't some weird reflection. She saw the same thing. And we're listening to the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost, right? And then after we get a fill of this dance of lights in the sky, the lights shoot over to a church 1 block south, Our Lady of Pompeii, and they poise themselves on the dome of the church, and they're beaming at us. Now, we're just listening to the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. This is no accident that it goes on to a church. And then from the church, it shoots off in a zigzag motion and vanishes in a nanosecond over the Empire State Building, which I could see from my apartment.
Wow.
And so we go up the roof, freaked out and amazed, and there's a guy on the roof, saw the same thing. And coincidentally, it was a guy that's a drummer in the house whom I had just turned on to John Coltrane. And there's the three of us. We're like gaping at each other with complete astonishment. Now, I have never been able to get over that experience. I can't even explain what it is, but there was definitely, this is something outside of the normal world. And it was both psychic and I don't know what it was, you see, but that's one of the most powerful experiences I ever had.
Well, it's really cool that somebody else saw it too, because that comes into question a lot of the paranormal or whatever activity that we have. We think, well, is this in my consciousness? What's the difference, right? Like, am I the only one that saw this because I have something going on? Or even Robert Monroe thought he was crazy when he started having out-of-body experiences, but some other guys saw that too. So that's interesting. Do you think that it really did come around because you were listening to Coltrane? Like, that's exactly why it showed up?
That's the question. I do not believe these were aliens from another planet. It makes no sense to me that some galactic traveler is going to come to the Greenwich Village just to hang out with us for about 1 minute. I think that it's really a mystery to me, but I somehow feel that we summoned up from some deeper reality, not outer space, but outer mental space, something that was trying to communicate with us that had to do with spirituality and mystery. And I that's all I can say. That, of course, since that time, I learned that was the first time I even realized anything about these unexplained aerial phenomena. And then I began to do research. So, and I realized, and I'm still doing research on that. So, in fact, one of the things I'm interested in trying to do is connect the parapsychology and so-called ufology. They tend to stay apart from each other, but in fact, they both involve the similar kinds of phenomena. UFO contact experiences often involve levitation. They invariably seem to involve telepathy. All these are paranormal. So what's going on? So anyway, that would be my one example of a very striking experience that I had that has. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Yeah,
no, that is truly amazing. Kind of reminds me of the Phoenix Lights and then that story,
Yeah.
Was it somewhat like that?
Yeah. I have literally seen programs which showed people filming lights exactly like the lights that we saw on that night in back in 1971. So and it's happening. It's still happening right now. It's happening all over the place. Strange things are happening, and I
totally agree with that. What do you think? And this is kind of an open-ended question and rhetorical a bit, but I still like to ask it to everybody that's into the same stuff I'm into. What do you think the potential of the human being on this earth actually is? I mean, I know there are boundaries here, of course. I mean, that's what this place has, but do you think that we haven't even began to tap into our potential and we're that far away from what the human is capable of doing, or that we're getting close to discovering everything?
Yeah, that's a really, really interesting question. And what I argue in my book on miracles is that when you look at the whole range of extraordinary phenomena, all the different forms of the paranormal, the mystical, all the higher forms of consciousness, it's very difficult to avoid the temptation to, when you piece all of these different abilities together, you begin to get a picture of, in my judgment, the human being that we are going to evolve, that we are meant to evolve into. It does seem to me that human beings are only partially evolved. I mean, we have spiritual, rational, emotional skills and capacities, but most of us, and intuitive abilities, we all have little bits of these things. Only some of us are extraordinarily evolved, but even they are only reflections of the full potential. When I dwell on the very, very big picture, I feel that what it all means, it's all pointing toward the future evolution of the human being. Clearly, the species, as far as it's gone, it's a very mixed bag, right? I mean, we have great people, we have normal, decent people, and we have infinitely vile people. And so we're all the same species, and we all have the same possibilities, good and bad. I mean, Goethe, the great German poet, said, and I agree with him, by the way, he said, I cannot imagine any crime that I might not commit under certain circumstances. I mean, I myself am a completely non-violent person. I still worry about a squirrel that I killed 25 years ago. I had to, because it was in my house. I think it was a sick squirrel, and I clobbered him to death. I still think about it. Nevertheless, every now and then I have thoughts of that I'm ashamed to admit that I have. Things anger me and so forth that that I want to do something badly. Not that I have, or I probably won't. But I think that we're only halfway there as a species, something like that, I would say. But these phenomena are pointers to human evolution. The question is, will it ever happen, and how will it happen? How will it come about that the species, in some large, significant way, moves ahead and becomes more evolved? That's the great challenge. And I think when science comes together, gets it together, we can begin to think scientifically and spiritually how we can accelerate our own evolution as a species. In fact, that's what I'm kind of thinking about writing about, another book exploring that very idea.
I think we're getting close to it. I really do. I mean, I don't think we're getting close as we can be, but we're getting closer to it, because they're into things like quantum computing see, here's what gets me, and I'm curious about what you think about this too. You got the Hadron Collider, and you've got it's almost like we're in a world of mad scientists that are willing to dump all kinds of money into these great big machines to find the smallest particles in the material world and the smallest of everything. And it's like, when are they at some point, a scientist was going to have to say, okay, maybe this is more about consciousness. Maybe we're missing something here. Maybe it's not about the physical realm or the smallest particle. Maybe we should put some real money behind looking into consciousness exploration and on a mainstream level.
Boy,
that would be
totally
different.
agree with you. Absolutely. That to me is what we need as a species, to redistribute our focus of interest, scientific. Look at the billions and billions of dollars we spend on weapons of mass destruction. Where's America, for example, sorry if I have to mention this because it's a fact, we are the biggest arms producers on the planet.
Oh, yeah.
We're feeding the world with weapons of mass destruction so we can make money. That's a horror. That's a complete, total horror. And the opposite of what we need to be doing. So, I'm an optimist in terms of human potential, but when I look at the world around me, realistically, I have a sense of.
You get a little bit pessimistic about it, right? Because,
we have a long way to go, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Our species.
The mad, I hate to even say it, but that's what I call it, the mad scientist. We have so much right now going into technology, into things like SpaceX, into the technocracy where they're trying to hook, computers into your brain. And just the Hadron Collider itself is an example of what the humans will go to try to find an even smaller particle. They're trying, right now, they geared up the Hadron Colliders just recently with more power than they've ever done to try to create miniature black holes. And there's no oversight there. Even David Adair agreed with me on that. Someone should have oversight over these mad scientists that are doing this stuff. And I feel like it's going to get dangerous at some point,
Yeah, I look, this, what you're describing right now, I'm not familiar with, but I don't doubt it. One of the things that bothers me is that they're now working on smaller, usable atomic weapons. Can you imagine that the reasoning behind that? In other words, okay, we can't use big hydrogen bombs, but we can use smaller nuclear weapons, more surgically directed application of nuclear power.
Wow.
That's happening, and it's a bad sign for the future of our species. I mean, add to the fact that we're at the tipping point of an irreversible plunge into climate catastrophe. Well, anyway, it's a dark world in many respects right now.
It's easy to get that way, right? See, and this is I think this is the thing. Another thing I wanted to ask you about too, because there's a moral dilemma here when it comes to the subject of consciousness, God, source, or what created this. In religion, they talk about, specifically Christian Judeo religions speak of God as mainly a good character all the time. It's the good character that's only looking out for the best of everything. But yet, when you really focus on the destructive nature of reality and the humans and behavior, and you think, well, there was either a good God and an evil God, or whatever this thing is created both of it. I don't want to sound like a kid in a preschool talking about this stuff, but we still have people believe in these things, and I don't think they're looking deep enough into it.
Well, I agree with you, and I think that what we call God is really part of human potential. I mean, I don't believe that there is. I mean, I don't know this, but I simply don't believe that there's some kind of a God, divine consciousness watching us. You see, bad boy. We are. There is a divine dimension, in my judgment, and it's revealed in human actions and human experiences, and it permeates the physical nature. I mean, the world is a beautiful place, at least when it's not being polluted. I'm very much in accord with your feelings here, and I don't know what to say.
Well, I mean, that's what happens when you get to the late night. You start talking about all this. These are my favorite type of conversations, by the way. We only got a couple of minutes left in the broadcast, so I mean, if you don't mind, Dr. Grosso, can you tell people how to get your book, like where they can follow your work at? And your blog is really a good read too, by the way. But yeah, how can people find you on the web?
Thank you. Yeah, well, as far as my book, let me just say that it's cheap. This one, my other book was, I have a book out on levitation. I have 2 books out on levitation. One of them is the biography of Joseph Cupertino. You can get that on Amazon, and that just cost you about $10, I think, $12. And my book on miracles, you can also get on Amazon, and it's very inexpensive, about $15. So that's it. I mean, and I do have a blog, and I have an art site. If anyone is interested in, I happen to be, we didn't talk about this, but it didn't come up, but I'm interested in the intersection between art and the paranormal. And so I have a website called, what is it called? paintingthepsyche.com. That's easy to remember, where I have all of my artwork and ideas, connecting them.
Yeah.
And my blog is Consciousness Unbound .blog. If you just write that, Consciousness Unbound .blog, you can connect with me. And I'd love to hear from people, by the way. I enjoy interacting, writing. If you write something, write a comment, I'll write back. And I'm on Facebook. I have 2 different pages on Facebook, and I welcome people to join me in conversations.
Well,
so that's pretty much it.
Yeah. Well, everyone give them a follow. We'll leave the links on the archives too. Thank you so much for coming on the broadcast again. We'll do it again. Maybe when you come out with your new book. It was good to talk to you again. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks you. Thank you for inviting me a second time. Best of all to you. Bye now.
You too. Bye. Dr. Michael Grosso, everybody. That's a really cool guy to talk to. I could talk to that guy for hours about any stuff. And if you read any of his books, I think you'll find that they're very deep. Go check out his website too. We'll be back tomorrow night with open lines. We'll have a little fun before the weekend. But if you're still listening, you still want to stay up, we have the Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable coming up right after this. Make sure you go check out our archives. They're all free. Please support the show, and we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Have a good night.